And we have now a very interesting panel for you this afternoon on the impact of Industry 4.0 and somewhat of a showcase of New South Wales advanced manufacturing industry. So I'd like to begin by introducing to you the chair of this session, who is Kylie Bell, who's an Executive Director of Industry, Trade and Investment. Kylie is with the New South Wales Department of Industry. Kylie has considerable experience in global trade and investment and has worked in Southeast Asia, ASEAN, Europe and Australia in senior consulting, business development and diplomatic trade and investment positions. Her clients have ranged from Fortune 100 companies to startups in a broad range of industries, and she and her team look forward to talking to you about how the New South Wales government supports business growth in Australia's most forward-looking and business-friendly state. Over to you, Kylie, and welcome.
Thank you. Look, thank you everyone for coming along to the New South Wales session on what we are doing in our state to support the manufacturing sector, and in particular how we are managing the transformation of Industry 4.0 on the manufacturing industry. From our point of view, this involves two things, both the adoption of new technologies, but importantly, the adoption of new business models and doing things differently to achieve better outcomes. Rather than me presenting to you on what the New South Wales government is doing in sort of a death by PowerPoint situation, we have a fantastic panel that we've pulled together from across the state. And I'd like to start by introducing each of them to come to the stage and take a seat up here with me. So our first panellist today is Michael Sharpe. He's the State Director for New South Wales and ACT, we let them in, for the Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre. For those of you that don't know Michael, and I know he's well known to industry, he has more than 30 years. We should never say, we'll politely call that 3 decades, it sounds younger. He has worked heavily in the road industry and has deep manufacturing experience. Our second presenter is Mark Goodsell. He's the New South Wales Head and National Leader for Manufacturing for the Australian Industry Group. So Mark's current role centres on public advocacy, representing the manufacturing industry in that really important national body. David Fox, he's the General Manager from LA Services. He's one of New South Wales' great success stories. He's a company with significant manufacturing operations in New South Wales. His focus at LA Services is on transitioning towards digital opportunities and utilising new innovation platforms to build an industry and education business model. So he'll talk to you a little bit about what they're doing in LA Services, Fox Services LA today. And the final presenter is from the university sector in New South Wales, Professor Chun Wang. Professor Chun is head of the School of Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering at UNSW, one of New South Wales' leading universities. Chun has held senior research positions in advanced composites, in defence, in science and technology and aerospace in both Victoria, which we don't hold against you, and now in New South Wales. So welcome, Professor. So last year, the New South Wales government, launched our new advanced manufacturing strategy. For us, manufacturing is key to our economic success and key to job growth in our state. At the moment, across New South Wales, the manufacturing industry employs 250,000 people. So how we as the government assist the sector to grow and assist the sector to transition is critical to us. And so what I wanted to start with is to just, I'll start from left maybe and go to right. But ask each of you what Industry 4.0 means for you and the organisation that you represent, and share your views on the impact that it's having today.
Sure. Thanks, Kylie. Yeah, so certainly New South Wales leading the way with manufacturing right now, and it's now our largest expansion in manufacturing since 2005. So manufacturing really is on the move across the state, across a wide sector too. The regions are very strong. I guess when you hear about the Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution, it's come a long way from back to the steam-powered Industry 1.0. We have a company called Varley, based at Newcastle, still owned by the same family after 132 years. Started their business 132 years ago by transforming sailing ships into steam-powered vessels, so Industry 1.0. And that business has proved to be resilient over all those decades, and now into Industry 4.0 and looking at sectors as far and broad as defence. So we've got a broad range of industry right across the state, and it's expanding. That's the good news.
Mark, would you like to share your thoughts?
Industry 4 is an opportunity and a challenge for manufacturing, because manufacturers traditionally are very much wrapped up in the physical world. They make things you can pick up, turn over, look at, throw at people, and sell, hopefully. The challenge of Industry 4 is it introduces the digital world. It's an integration of cyber and physical environments. And that requires technology, an approach to technology, and we've got room full of that kind of technology here. But it also requires a different way of thinking about your business. And for manufacturers who are succeeding in embracing that frontier, they're changing the way they think about their business, and they're starting to think about the opportunities from data and information and the cyber world. And that easily rolls off the tongue, but it can be a challenge. And probably one of the simplest ways to explain the challenge, as a company said to me recently, when I'm looking for people to work in my factory, I'm starting to look for people who can run the factory off an iPhone. Whereas a traditional manufacturer wanted to be out crawling all over the machines, feeling them, listening to them. So you've got to start to, embedded in this mindset is the need to start trusting data in a way that you may not have trusted data in the past. It means that you have to start trusting other collaborators, universities, suppliers, customers, having collaboration relationships with them, that because they're going to know stuff about this data and how to use it and how to monetize it that you may not. Yeah. So it's a real challenge, not only for how you structure your business, but how you think about your business, particularly in a very traditional sector like manufacturing.
Great. David, as someone that's actually working in a real live manufacturing company, can you tell us what the impact of what Industry 4.0 is having on your business?
Yeah. Okay. So just to give a little bit of context, L&A is a heavy fab and welding business, so very traditional from a trade point of view. So I guess for Industry 4 for us, we've kind of distilled it down to four things: is around the data, advanced analytics, human to machine interface, and the physical to digital transformation, or digital physical, depending on the interpretation of that. So what does that really mean for us? It's one around the product output, so what, I guess, remaining connected with the product, so what might that mean to our business, and adding, I guess, more value around complexity or IP in a product than might be traditional in the trades. The other impact will be around the skills, what sort of people might we need as we go forward, and we look at products that are connected to our customer and how that experience might be. So all of a sudden you're looking at very different sorts of skills to what was traditional. And perhaps the third one is really around the business models, because your product changes and the opportunities around that change. So that's kind of, I guess, in our mind, how we've kind of become comfortable with what Industry 4 is in terms of finding a definition. So that's where we're at. Yep.
And Professor, would you like to just add your thoughts from a university perspective? I imagine the research that you've undertaken in the last 10 years has gone through significant changes.
Yes, indeed. I can see a few familiar faces in the audience. The Australian universities have changed significantly. It's much more industry oriented. collaborating with companies and locally and internationally. In my area of research, I can see currently, for example, we're doing lots of research in making sensors that has localized intelligence. For instance, we're working with a company based in Sydney developing this smart autonomous fire protection system that has sensors, fire retardant agent devices will produce mist, and you have automated system that has embedded artificial intelligence to make decisions. So that is coming together in that new paradigm. I would say the universities have a very critical role to play. But there are challenges. The distance between the companies and universities can be large, simply because the maturity of technology is very different. Universities tend to focus still on finding the very first innovation, early stage research, and trying to insert that into product. That's quite a bit long way to go. That's where the Industry Growth Center plays a huge role in connecting the university with companies, in inserting or adopting new technology in the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor. Which leads me, and you've spoken a little bit about it, as have others on the panel, just as we've heard. But my next question is around that collaboration. I think in some ways, in order for industry and education and research to succeed and to support the ongoing innovation from industry, we need to get much better at collaboration. Companies can't do it on their own. Governments can only support so much. And of course, the university and education sector experiences a similar issue. I might ask you, Professor, as well as Michael, just representing the industry group, how can industry and universities perhaps collaborate more effectively? And who else needs to be collaborating with the sector and the university sector to achieve better outcomes for our industry? And I'm also thinking here, and you mentioned it, around companies now saying that they want people and skills and talent to be able to operate a factory or run things from an iPhone. So without that pipeline of new talent with new skill sets coming into the industry, or that ongoing refreshment of talent, we might not achieve the outcomes that we need. And so I wondered if both of you had some thoughts on that. Maybe some stories of some great successes that you've seen with industry and university collaboration, and maybe some war stories of things that haven't worked very well, so we don't make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah, sure. I mean, from the Growth Centre perspective, we're really building this new ecosystem of manufacturers right across Australia. And membership is free. We encourage people to get on the website and join, because we're stronger together. And the sort of thing that you mentioned, collaboration. Yeah. It's a key driver to being an advanced manufacturer. We need more Australian companies working together, big and small, but also working with our world-leading researchers. We've got some of the best researchers in the whole planet right here in Australia, and we need to tap into that. We're seeing some great success stories around that. I've been out interviewing some of our members, and you can see their stories on our website. So it's about sharing this information, sharing the success and the negatives as they occur. But certainly there's a real growth opportunity for companies to collaborate and work stronger together. When you talk about skills, you think, cast your mind back only 10 years ago, the iPhone didn't exist. No. So the iPhone in itself was an innovation, and now we're talking about apps that can basically run your business. So that's how quickly things have transitioned. And talk about the next 10 years, who knows where we're going to end up. But I can guarantee you we're going to be stronger together when we can collaborate and work with some of our world-leading researchers, just like our good professor here today. What do you reckon?
Excellent. I think it's a wonderful point. I think the many things we can do, the two things I like to highlight, one is the talent development. We really need to work in the early stage of undergraduate education, postgraduate education, to bring them closer to the industry, right, during the study, university time. Another thing we are just working right now is to develop industry engagement strategies and roadmaps, essentially in developing technology, working with the company together to jointly develop the roadmaps for all the technology we're developing and how that can be actually translated into practice. We're not doing that very well at the moment. There's just lack of integration. that disconnect at the early stage research is a big problem. And because once you got further down the track, and it might be too late to influence the development and the sort of consideration you need to bring in. For example, if we develop a smart garment for monitoring human health and to reduce the unnecessary medical interventions and to get the right data, and unless you work with clinicians, and if you just work in the lab, working on sensors, materials, not understanding what are the biosignal we want to measure, and that could be a big waste of time.
Yep.
But I talked about collaboration, and just on the collaborative efforts, I'll give you some practical examples. We recently held a workshop, and key members of the Department of Industry came along to Armidale, where we hosted local manufacturers in the New England region. And one of our members there is in engineering fabrication works, and had trouble transporting his equipment from Armidale north to Queensland. And one of the other companies that was in the workshop, they'd never met before, but he's based at Tamworth, not far away. And he said, I've got my own truck fleet. I can move your gear up to Brisbane. We go there every day. So now those two companies are working together and benefiting each other. Another one is, we're joined here today by Peter Cole from a company called ICEC International, exporting to countries all around the globe with some terrific sensing technology. And now we've connected Peter and his team with a company about reshoring the plastics manufacturing for the casings that he's using around these world-class sensors. So before, these companies didn't know each other, but now they do, and they're going to leverage each other's strengths. So that's going to be the key driver for the whole Australian industry to work together more and leverage our strengths together. That's going to be a key finding.
And I just might ask one more question on this point of collaboration. And Mark, obviously you represent a vast majority of members, both large and small, in the work that you do with AIG. Do you find that industry knows how to access universities and research, and perhaps you might like to explain for businesses here in the room, or whatever you call this, the hall today, how they might go about it? So A, is there a market failure? And B, if they want to talk to you about research, aside from taking your card after today, how can businesses engage with universities?
I think the starting point about this collaboration story is it is hard. And it's hard because the Australian business culture in the past hasn't valued it. So if companies are finding it hard and universities are finding it hard, there's a reason for it, because we haven't done a lot of it before. We've known, one of the things we've discovered about the Australian business psyche, particularly in the traditional industries over the last 5 or 10 years, is that we've tended to value a rugged individualism in the way we did business. It was our economic model was very much inward looking, not a lot of focus on export. Your competition was down the road. You didn't easily collaborate with them because they'd rip you off. So you tended to sort of hide in your cave a bit. So the first point to make is when people tell you to collaborate and you find it, you're not quite sure how to do it, or you find your early attempts are difficult, there's a reason for that, and that is because it's not something we've done a lot of. From the university side, they've not been encouraged to collaborate as well as institutions and as individual academics. I think it's fairly well known that their status comes from publishing information, not giving it to people who are going to monetize it. So we're coming at this collaboration historically from different viewpoints. The good thing is that is changing, and we know it's changing because we're finding it hard. We're only finding it hard because we're trying to do it. If we weren't trying to do it, nobody could be complaining about collaboration. So I think the positive thing is it's difficult because we're trying. And like learning surfing in your 50s, trying something new is hard at first.
Also, in your 20s, it's quite hard.
So the pain is a sign of success. What it comes down to is that first, going back to that mindset thing, it requires a lot of trust, and trust is not something that is easily purchased or gained. Trust usually comes from experience. So sometimes your first attempts will not have trust and you'll get burnt. So typically companies Like with export, they'll say, I've tried that and it didn't work or I got burnt. I think we need to read those as signs of success because we're trying something that's new and difficult rather than reasons not to keep trying. The government, the federal government, has put the weights on universities to go out and collaborate, particularly with SMEs where there's not been a big history of it. And we know that because we at AI Group and a lot of other institutions and companies have suddenly been flooded by all these industry engagement people from universities. And they're learning how to do it as well, and it's a bit clunky. So there's a lot of learning going on. It does come about through, it does require trust. Companies typically say, where's the front door? University, someone described going into a university as going into a roundabout and continuing going round and round and a roundabout because they're pretty complex organisations. So universities need to do a better job of saying where their front door is. We're trying to act within our limited capacity as part of the front door. We've started, and I know AMGC and other people, friends of manufacturing, have been trying to drive, you know, go and visit your local university a bit more, come in, find out what they're doing, find out what the funding models are, find out where the front door is and who to talk to, and keep pounding away. The trick is, I think, from companies' point of view, is you need some sort of strategy about this. You need to have an innovation strategy. You can quickly go mad if you look at all the shiny stuff, even just in its hall, and try to engage with it all. So you still need the discipline of knowing where are the problem-solving areas that could make the biggest difference to my business or my customers, and focus there. Don't get too diverted into all the bright, shiny stuff around the edges. You need that discipline. But once you've got that focus or focus area, don't be afraid to try some difficult things and collaborative things with the universities. And CSIRO, who are an amazing national resource that are also sort of
a national
branching
treasure.
out. National treasure.
Professor, do you have anything to add? Or
Yeah, I might just add to that point. As you pointed out, the universities are changing very quickly. It's no longer, for example, the student, particular staff members' promotion is no longer based on publications. It's only based on impact. This impact outside publications, societal, economic, environmental impact, make a real difference. That is gaining significant momentum, mainly partly driven by the government through different mechanisms. Internally, is recognition to that people who are working in the universities actually want to make a difference. They want to make a difference in real life. So there is a tendency for people trying to go out, work with company. As you said, we don't have a coherent, strategy to work together. It's very fragmented, very much individual-driven. That most of the universities are putting into place a more structured approach. But nevertheless, there's more to be done to make that happen more smoothly.
excellent. The next theme I want to touch on, so the first was collaboration. I think the second is technology. And David, I was impressed that you've changed your company name to move, to services, to demonstrate the fact. And when you spoke about your business and where you were going as a manufacturer, one of the first things you spoke about was analytics and big data rather than your machine and your equipment. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on having gone through this transformation yourself, I guess, is what do you see as some of the biggest challenges and barriers to companies to overcome the adoption of new smart technologies?
For us, I guess the first barrier was just trying to get a context for Industry 4 and a definition around that. And that was, I guess, a bit of a struggle and very hard. And I mean, Mark touched on having a strategy around it. It's a bit iterative process we've found. In some ways, we've had a lot of conversations with universities where it has just been around just getting to know, like, and trust, taking that business mentality, building relationships with different people, and de-shuckling ourselves a bit from this university, that university, and finding people that are genuinely interested in what we want to do. And we've found that the engagement with the university certainly has helped us to, they're real people. We've sat down and had coffees with many of them and just slowly built that conversation up. And through that, we've been able to identify a context and the meaningful application for the technologies. That's probably the first thing that I think was a barrier. This one. The second one, I think, is around developing a strategy and a structure that's aligned to our strategy. So being a bit deliberate about, what do we actually need in place to make these things happen, and also the decision-making mechanisms that we have through an advisory board or independence or whatever it is, and setting that up to help us make the decisions about how do we move through that. It's been a big one, and probably the hardest one, and we're still struggling with that a bit, is learning to forget some of our past.
Yep.
It's actually holding us back. And so, we've always done it this way, or we're always going to do it like that. And we don't even think about shifting that, and yet that's actually a barrier if you can't shift your mindset. And so that's probably one of the bigger lessons is learning to forget your past, where it's actually holding you back. I guess they're the three things that have been our genuine barriers to actually being able to have meaningful conversations with universities and industry bodies and that sort of thing, to start framing real projects that can actually shift us to an advanced state from the traditional state.
And can I ask, and this is not obviously in the adoption of technology, there was a business problem that you were trying to solve. And so what led you to realise that you needed to leverage new technology in your business and to not keep doing things the way that you had been doing them? Was there pressures around cost, competitiveness? I guess, what drove you to begin this journey?
Yeah, that's an interesting question in our space. We did a bit of an analysis of our business in 2016 or through the course of that year, and two of us spent most of the year out of the building talking to people. And when we came together at the end of that year and started talking about what are the real threats to the business, we actually felt we were going to run out of a workforce because people just didn't want to come and work for us. If we had to stay the same, we felt that was going to be a real deal breaker for us, that the traditional trades we have are getting older and older, and young people, they're not even going to look at us as a business to come and see. So that was probably the thing that really drove it, was okay, if we adapt new technologies, that might be able to have a conversation with the next generation of manufacturers. So we went about how do we engage with that generation to see if, one, it could be of interest, and two, what it might bring. And that's actually what's given us a lot of energy, is having young people starting to engage with us and wanting to engage with us. And as one of the phone calls I got off a girl from the local girls' school, she rang me up and said, I've heard that you're a really cool company. Can I come and spend 2 weeks with you guys to learn about engineering? Something I never imagined, 2 years ago, that they would be ringing a company like us to say that. So that was actually the thing.
It's a sign of success.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Mark, I'm going to ask you the same, once again in the capacity that you represent New South Wales and Australian industry. What are your members telling you are the challenges that they're experiencing around technology adoption?
I'll just pick up on what David said.
And the drivers of that too, I guess.
That issue about being attractive to the younger people. I mean, that's an industry issue, and it would be terrible to have a really great industry in Australia, manufacturing industry in Australia, that died because no one wanted to work in it. So that's a challenge that industry's got to take on in making it itself attractive. In terms of the technology, I think the journey you typically, I sit in listening to a lot of conversations between manufacturers and operations people in manufacturers, and there appears to be a common theme almost universally that they, as this hall suggests, they approach it as a technology play. They get excited about the latest machine. That's how they approach Industry 4 as a company or as an individual. They soon discover there are people issues behind that. Who do you get to run it? How do you get people to get their heads around exploiting it? And then eventually they end up with, how do we make money out of it? So the journey with Industry 4 starts typically as a technology play, goes via a people issues play, and ends up as a business model play. And that's how you know you've done it well, is you start thinking about your business model. You start thinking in terms of not only how can the technology make our traditional products better, or integrate with our supply chain better, how can we actually produce different products that start, in some cases, generating their own data stream, which we resell? And the end game is, what companies start to find in manufacturing is, horror of horrors, they end up earning more money out of services they're selling than the things they're making. It's a bit like the iPhone model. Almost give the phone away, but make money on the services. Or the printer model, cheap printer, expensive peripherals. It's manufacturing in effect is sort of going on that journey. The value is still in the product, but it's that business model being able to not only generate value, but then having a business model that will capture that value. And that's probably where a lot of companies trip up. If they get that far, they can generate a tremendous amount of value for their customers, but not get paid for it. So that's the end game of what starts out as a technology play.
And Mark covers it very well. You know, there's a lot of companies out there, we talk about collaboration and we talk about research. You know, David and LA Services are a shining example of doing all these right things and going out. You heard David say he went out and asked questions. You know, but how many of you in the audience go out and talk to your local universities or talk to the business down the road of how you can leverage each other's services? You know, right now in New South Wales at the University of Wollongong, we're leading the whole world in robotics welding. You know, so talk about the traditional scale of being a welder, hot and dirty work, but now pretty much if you can operate a PlayStation, you can be a welder. And instead of just being able to just do one weld at a time, you can have a robotic system to do 3 or 5 welds simultaneously. So how can we encourage the next generation to get involved with this industry? And just elaborate on what Mark was saying, you know, our mantra is that we say it's not what you make, but how you make it. And so we talk about material science. And you know, the NSW Smart Centre are leading the world right now with material recycling and turning plastics or other waste materials into 3D filaments that can be used in a whole wide range of products. So new material science into the products that you're producing today, what could that do for your costs? How could it perhaps improve quality and be able to export it to the world? These are the sort of things we need to touch on.
Yeah, I agree. And actually that leads me, I have 2 last questions. The next is on business models, and I'm not sure if they've been answered, but I'd like to push it a little bit further. It's great having, and there's a lot of gadgets here in this hall, and it's great having fantastic technology, but without the business model with that technology, there's not necessarily a guaranteed chance of success. David, you've spoken already a little bit on this and around the way that you've restructured the work that you do. But could you tell us a little bit from your perspective on how you've adopted your business model to transform your business?
Yeah, okay. I think, if I go back a little bit of what Mark said around, the shiny thing in the sky, that's certainly a good place to get you curious about what might happen. And then I guess in our journey, it's been around reassessing that data, the advanced analytics, human and machine interface, and physical to digital thing, and then looking at that and going, okay, well, our very traditional non-innovative product, what might happen if we put those together? And then all of a sudden we realise that there's an opportunity there for us to stay connected with our products, which is a whole new world for us. And then in doing that, it builds a whole lot of capability around the business, because you're sort of bringing on board people with a whole range of skills that can then, I guess, master across different problems. So, as we thought more about that, we thought, okay, well, all of a sudden, our products potentially, rather than just putting on a truck and sending it out the door, we could actually stay connected with it, which means that, we're doing the data streams, which Mark spoke about. There's potentially service agreements around that. As we look to make the products more reliable or more efficient to use, so taking, managing the operation of that product to some degree, or even integrating those products into larger digital asset systems. So potentially then we could, maybe sell our capability in that rather than selling the thing that Mark spoke about earlier. We're just selling the capability, so all of a sudden we may have quite a collection of, interesting sort of people that can do user experience design, UX design, or CX design, as well as the engineers that do the hardware. And that might be something that could form a joint venture or a partnership across developing, assets for defence or something like that. So it's not so much about the defence. I think that's one of the business models that's really interesting is that it extends out what you have. And the other one that we've found through our experience with the industry education engagement is that we're actually starting to be asked to have a lot of contributions towards how do we kind of reshape some education that's going on. So again, that may be a service in the end, that we provide a very meaningful platform for STEM or STEAM education and offering services in that space. And certainly the partnership we have with the local high school who's helping us develop some software for, I guess, as a minimal viable product, is a good example of that we're starting to now get involved with them around developing curriculum that can help these students to really deliver meaningful stuff around science or around mathematics and even around English and writing theses and stuff like that for universities as they prepare students, genuinely prepare students for the future. So it's been really interesting from a business model point of view that all of a sudden there are these other different streams that you could start to leverage. Getting our heads around how that works, well, that's where, going back to what I said about, setting up advisory boards and independents that are helping you to really shape the business aspects of it. They're not the technical people, but they're the business people that help you do that. So being brave enough as owners of companies to say, okay, I don't really have the answers. Maybe I will set up an advisory board that's chaired by an independent who's certified, and we start to work through those strategies to deliver those new revenue streams.
Excellent. And so it has genuinely delivered fantastic new revenue streams for your business. I mean, that's the key outcome, is that...
Yeah, that's what we're achieving. We're still on that journey. We're still mapping that out.
Yeah.
But it's certainly obvious now that we can do that, and having, I guess, had the confidence to have those conversations and start to go to universities. We're now at the point where, we're comfortable with probably selling something we haven't actually built yet, which is really interesting for a manufacturer, that we could maybe go out and sell that and then work it and then assemble the team to make that happen.
Okay, that's great. Look, and I've just got one final question from actually everyone as well, because in the roles that you play in working with industry, you'll also see some amazing examples of great stories of examples of companies that have embraced new production techniques and embraced new business models. Are there any examples that you'd like to highlight to the audience so they can say, oh, that's interesting, I should go away and consider that myself? Yeah, Michael?
Definitely. I just think if you all take a note. That,
one
New South
good
Wales
story
government
each,
right now, the state of New South Wales has various funding opportunities, and you can look at the Jobs for New South Wales website. Tech vouchers is a great initiative. So right now we're talking with companies in Western Sydney who might be looking at, you hear people say, I'm ready to buy a robot. And I say, well, that's great, but what are you going to do with it? So using the tech vouchers to co-fund a project where you can get a university researcher to come into your business and do a mapping project of the business to look at what would be the best case scenario to help transform your processes right now. That funding's available. It's there for you in New South Wales right now. So we're seeing that happen. To get some of these researchers out of the universities and onto the factory floors with you is a great opportunity for your business to grow.
Yep. Mark, do you have any great stories of great Australian
I have lots of
successes?
great stories.
Yeah.
I'll tell one because the person involved is or the company's in the audience. And I was at Macquarie Uni probably about 2 years ago, and they've got a really cool unit looking at optics, lasers and things like that, and doing really fine work, really pointy-headed stuff. And they were showing me around. It looked like a typical uni. There were people in white coats poring over machines that looked like they could take it to the moon and back. And I said, what are they working on there? They said, something better to do with microfluidics. Now, I'm not a technical person. I'd only ever heard the word microfluidics once before in my life. And it was when I was visiting Neil Wilson's company, Romar, in Western Sydney, about 6 months earlier. And I said to them, I know what microfluidics is. They said, because I heard it at Romar. And they plucked out one of the people who was poring over the machine in the university, and it was one of Neil's guys. And it was the first sort of confronting picture of an SME so engaged with a uni that looked like a uni person. They were all sort of poring over this. That's where we've got to get to. We've got to get away from this. Universities are over there, companies are over there. It's what they do in the best parts of Europe. They do it in the UK, they do it in Silicon Valley. You can't tell who the university people are and who the company people are because they're both interested in the same problem and they're both working on it together. That's what collaboration looks and feels like when we get it together.
Professor David, I'm not going to ask you because I've asked you enough. Professor, do you have one great example as well of something, confidentiality aside, but clearly you work with industry every day now as well?
I visited a number of companies, including Aroma Engineering in the audience. ResMed is a good example, story being told many, many times. And I visited another company in Sydney. They're making a device fully automated. But they are in the dilemma whether they want to actually send the line overseas or return it in Australia. So ResMed is a good example where you still can do the line volume production and export it internationally. But that model is not really universal yet. And we have a lot of many companies who even gone fully automated. And this particular example I just mentioned, and they have 6 robots in the line, fully automated the production. But the next stage of the business plan is to send the line overseas.
Yep.
Ask the question, why?
Yep.
Why would you send overseas fully automated, done by robot? And their comments was the suppliers, they buy the material that run the line is from Asia, and the major customers in Asia. So you buy and then you send it overseas. I said, well, there's really great examples that can be done. And ResMed is a good example. But I think there's an opportunity to help the industry to be able to do that. And that's where the government might be able to encourage the company to help them.
Yeah, excellent. All right, there's a good thing happening there. So what I might do is throw to the audience, and I believe, although I can't see it because my glasses are for reading, not for looking out, that there's a roving mic somewhere. Does anyone have any questions of our panel? There is the mic. And there's no questions. Yes? I'll take the glasses off now. I can see you.
Hello, is that it? Yeah, perhaps not so much a question, but yeah, we work closely with universities both in Australia and overseas, and you've got to track the academic. You watch all the academics and you work out which one, and then you start to go and approach them, and then their personality comes out. And there are some academics you can work with and some you're just never going to work with because some get it and some don't. But first of all, you've got to know what problem you want to solve and go find that academic, and it can be in any country of the world, not necessarily Australia. We work with Mendel in the Czech Republic, we work in Belgium, we work in Ghent, in Guelph in Canada, University of Western Australia and Monash.
Okay.
So all those people are academics who provide us intellectual property and help us move forward. So that's how we do it.
Excellent, thank you.
Peter raises a good point there. Today we've just launched the Manufacturing Academy. It's a website where you can hear from manufacturers sharing their stories. So we say it's from manufacturers for manufacturers. You'll see it at manufacturingacademy.org.au, and you'll hear Peter on there with some of his story. But really encourage you to have a look at that website and get engaged because it's going to be growing as we move forward.
Yes.
What's the impact of Industry 4.0 on energy efficiency and savings in the future?
I didn't hear, I think the
Energy
question was,
Yeah.
what is the impact of Industry 4.0 on energy efficiency? Sorry, that's hard to hear. I'm sure, it's hard to hear.
It's we're seeing that as a really key entry point at the moment because energy costs are top of mind. 91% increase in electricity costs to manufacturers in the last 10 years in Australia, 48% increase in gas prices. All other inputs only a 22% increase, and selling prices 19%. So with that kind of environment, energy is top of mind, and we're seeing a lot of companies looking at the technology for that purpose. Now, hopefully, it opens up a wider perspective on the leverage from digitisation. But if that's your entry point and that gives you some immediate payback, it's a really good entry point at the moment. And a lot of it is to do with using sensing and data to understand where your energy is leaking. I mean, when energy was cheap, we didn't care. Now it's much more expensive. A lot of manufacturers, surprisingly, didn't know how they were using electricity, how they were using energy, and finding out that is a good and sometimes quite cheap entry point for digital engagement.
And there's another great program right now around the energy efficiency program with the New South Wales State Government. So I'm sure you can look on the website at Department of Industry and Jobs for New South Wales. There's various programs, but encourage you to look at this energy efficiency program, which is being rolled out right across the state now. It's a good initiative.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, my question is about collaboration. So I'm Jeremy from local Kickstart Advisory Company. We help companies secure funding from government grants and various different funding. We heard about business models and funding, collaboration with universities. I think from my experience, consultants and advisors can bring a lot of value in that, okay? Because you need to reconcile 3 or 4 different worlds: administrators, bureaucrats, technicians, CEOs, okay? Different people see projects from different perspectives and not everybody understands everybody, okay? So that's how projects get disqualified or disapproved. My question is, how can local consultancies like ourselves, for example, collaborate with companies through platforms like AMGC or industry group? You know, can we be part of your database or part of your workshops, like you mentioned that, Michael? You know, because that's our bread and butter, and we can help tremendously. We can be instrumental in a company being successful in research and development incentive, or being totally drawn into, out of business.
So certainly I would encourage you to get on our website and join. Membership's free. We welcome you to become a member. If you're involved in the manufacturing sector, you're part of a growing economy. You know, it's 10% of the Australian workforce. That's the good news. It's a different conversation to what we might have had just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So welcome you as a member. Membership is free, and then we can connect you to this whole ecosystem. And I would encourage you to bring your clients to get involved and meet these other manufacturers. We certainly can do more together.
Yeah. Do you have any?
Look, trust is a big issue with consultants. I had a member ring me up years ago. They'd been told that there was some new government legislation that was going to make their life a misery, and they rang me up and said, "Is this one of those? Is this real, or is this one of those issues consultants tell me about to generate work?" The point of that story is that consultants are part of the trust equation, and you are right. A good consultant can really add value and help navigate what can be a confusing new area for a company, but it really comes down to trust, and whether the company trusts that, like any kind of brokerage arrangement, whose interests are you working in? And really good consultants who've built that kind of model of trust, demonstrated quite often by saying, "We're not the person you should be using, go and see someone else." That's when they add value. If they don't have that approach, they can actually get in the way and turn people off. We're very cautious about how we allow consultants to sort of interact with our members through us because of the nature of our business, but doesn't mean that we don't. But it starts from that notion of who's got a track record of actually helping companies time over time.
Thanks. All right. I can't. Oh, there is one. Sorry. And then that might be the last.
Hello. I come from China. Yeah. I had immigrated to Brisbane last year, and I have a software company in China, and we research manufacture exclusive system software. It's the industry, yeah, the core cost software, and actually we supply to the top 100 biggest company, Germany company, Linter forklift, yeah, and I hope we have opportunity to supply the service to Australia manufacturers, and maybe we have opportunity we can cooperate to develop our products in Australia. So I want to ask the Australian industry leader, how about do you see the my question?
So yes, certainly welcome you to get involved. Again, you're welcome to join the organisation. We have a growing network right across the country. I would encourage you to attend some of our events. With the New South Wales Government, we're hosting events right across New South Wales, particularly in the regions, which is growing stronger every day. And there might be opportunities for you to engage with some of the manufacturers out in those areas. Certainly encourage you to get involved with all the opportunities that are happening right now in New South Wales.
Your question raises an important issue that's buried in the New South Wales Government's Advanced Manufacturing Strategy, and mentioned in passing that 5 state governments now have advanced manufacturing strategies of one sort or another. Hopefully they'll be consistent with each other, but that's a good sign. But one of the realities of modern manufacturing in a globalised world is both forwards and backwards globalisation. So it used to be the case that you tried to seek a lot of your suppliers locally. Hopefully all your customers were local, but if you started exporting, you tended to rely on a local supply chain as much as you can. What's emerging in frontier manufacturing is that both your supply chain and your customer can be globally based. So accessing companies like yours as part of a valued supply chain is no stranger than doing it locally. It does raise a couple of issues though. One is the trade flows between companies, between countries, and the rules of trade, including the rules of trade for digital products. That's a really important issue. The government, when it's negotiating free trade agreements now, traditionally focused on goods and agricultural products. Increasingly, they're looking at the supply of services and increasingly looking at how digital services cross country boundaries, because there are real issues about what happens when information goes from your country to another country and then back to you or back to your customers. And that opens up the issue of cybersecurity, which is one of the challenges of digitisation and Industry 4. So your question, sir, is really interesting in opening up. The answer is it's a globalised world and the best suppliers get the work, but it does raise some issues about how you think and how governments need to think about facilitating those flows in information, which are much harder to regulate and can contain, as we know from viruses and things like that, you can do a lot of damage from information flowing across borders. So it's just a new dimension of manufacturers have to get their heads around to be successful under this new model.
Yeah, thank you. I actually think we have to wrap up there.
Well, we have time for one more question, if there is a question.
I come from RMIT University. I just recently started working as an academic, and worked in industry till then. So I experienced the collaboration between industry and academia from both sides. And obviously we are driven by different KPIs. As academics, we've got certain things to meet, and in the industry, we've got certain things to meet as well. General perception is, from industry point of view, is that academic will provide cheap consultancy. Whereas from academics, they want to come up as a research project and get publications out of that. And there's a huge mismatch in what the actual desired outcomes are. And at the moment, personally, I'm struggling to find a way to change that. And would you recommend or suggest a body approach, anything like that, that could sort of change that?
I mentioned earlier about the Tech Voucher program. I think that's a great initiative to break down the barriers between research and industry and provide some funding to initiate that. Why would you go out and try and do all the hard work and find about perhaps what technology you need in your business when you can engage with some of the best researchers to help map that out for you? And the state government's willing to provide some funding towards that. I think that's a great initiative and a great example that several of our members have taken advantage of. But certainly the universities and the companies speak different languages. It's just a natural occurrence, and we need to break down those barriers to get people working together. So it's not just about going and visiting the university. I think I would certainly encourage all of you to do that, but it's also bringing the professors out, as they do now, and walking the factory floors with you to learn about your business. What's holding you back right now, and what can be changed to help your business grow? Yeah. Those opportunities are there, and there's more and more willingness each and every week for this to happen.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think we use the tech voucher as our first bite into that. I guess from an point of view in terms of physical output, not ideal. But in terms of a learning curve, amazing. I'll take, I think it was Peter over there, your point around finding the academic that kind of is your thing. We learned that. Through the tech voucher, we kind of just took what we were given and found some issues there. But I think, when we reflect on that, the whole journey about just going through that process has taught us so much about collaboration and finding that common language. And so, yeah, the cups of coffee and breakfast I've had with academics has been around trying to identify that common language and find that academic that kind of really fits with us. And perhaps that's why, as a small business with only 30 people, we have a relationship with Western Sydney, we have a relationship with Macquarie, with University of New South Wales, with Wollongong, and with UTS. There's 5 universities we're talking to now, and and that's in the space of a couple of years. And we haven't done anything with most of them in terms of formally, except for one. But we've had lots of really good conversations to help us find that common language. And now we're going into this second round. We're finding it much easier now to communicate about what do we really need out of this. So that's been, I guess, our experience in trying to do what you're saying, because there are these different viewpoints. So yeah.
With experience comes success.
Someone once said to me that the best collaborations of this sort is when you find someone in a company and an academic who are intensely interested in the same problem for its own sake. But as David said, it sometimes takes a while to build up a working relations. Timeframes are another classic problems. University timeframes classically are of a dimension different to commercial timeframes, where companies spot an opportunity and really need to act on it straight away. That's a bit of a challenge. One way of perhaps getting university level smarts into the company in a roundabout way is through internships. And there's growing interest and growing number of programs, particularly for PhD internships, where you can get a PhD student who's yet to qualify, but you can get them working on your problem in your company. It's not a perfect solution, but it's an emerging way to get this integration. A lot of the unis are working on how to handle IP, and there's quite a few different models emerging. Some have got an IP light approach, or they say they do, where they say, look, we've really historically really tightly held on to IP, but we've realised we haven't made much money out of it over the years. One said to me, our IP model is every 3 decades we'll win the lottery. And meanwhile, we'll miss out on a lot of collaboration opportunities. So they've actually walked back to a lighter IP approach. Some of the universities are now looking at sharing legal costs and trying to have low doc commercial relationships. So the universities have realised that this is a problem. They're coming from different points, but we're still learning what the solutions are. But I'd look at the internship, because the other thing about universities, they're full of students. And that's the other thing that so they've got two resources, knowledge and students. And I think the trick is to look at both of them, both of their latent knowledge, but also the fact that they've got students who are hopefully your future workforce.
Yeah, that's a great point to make. We actually saw some real live students walking around. Anyway, maybe that's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on this very excellent panel, chaired so well by Kylie Bell on behalf of the New South Wales Department of Industry. And you were listening to Professor Chun Wang from the School of Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering at UNSW, David Fox, the General Manager of L&A Pressure Welding, Michael Sharpe, next to him first, Mark Goodsell, the New South Wales Director for Australian Industry Group, and Michael Sharpe, Director of the Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre for the East area. So could you join me, please, in thanking our really excellent panel this afternoon of experts.